All right, here we go. Yes, day 24 with a lot of news. Wow, we have a lot of news. The reward has climbed. Yep, the reward is now 1 million. What I think is interesting about that, we have a special guest that's going to join us, touch on it a little bit, is just the fact. I think it's really interesting that Savannah wanted to do this right out of the box. So many people were questioning, why aren't they doing more money? Now we've learned that they did want to do more money. Hi there, Janet Dwyer. Well, they did want to do more money. And you know who? He apparently discouraged it and said we'll bring in too many false leads. So the first, we're still waiting for the sheriff to make a good decision. And we are going to be joined by a guest that's going to be coming up who is very impressive. I've had her on before, and she is just fantastic. Jennifer Coffendaffer, retired FBI agent. We're going to talk to Jen coming up. But as I've also been, good afternoon, everyone, been playing the latest video by Savannah. It's just absolutely gut-wrenching. Moving on to say, hold on. We're going to move. It is, it's a tough one. It's tough, but I think it's interesting that she is now. I don't need to play the whole thing. They're now offering $1 million. That should be the big takeaway. Now, we are live on YouTube, we're live on X, and we are also live, obviously, on our Facebook page. If you're watching on Facebook, you can certainly share that you are watching. And let me just check. I think the audio is totally. Yep. So that's how clear that is. I mean, it just keeps, but this is amazing that, and she wouldn't be saying that. Savannah, NBC, let me say this, NBC would not be saying that she wanted to start and have the reward at 1 million. They wouldn't be saying that if that were not, the case. You got to look at, do you really think NBC is going to be saying something like that? The answer is no. NBC would not be saying something like that. So this is day 24. Now, for those that are watching, we're right. This is what it comes down to, is Savannah and Nancy have gotten to know. So what you're looking at, I have found that it's most effective for me at times. I mean, we move around, but those of you who've been watching, we are at the top of the hill. What you're looking at the bottom of the hill, that is the structure. That's the home of Nancy Guthrie. You see these two gentlemen that work, I think they worked for Fox Nation, coming up the hill, and they set up the drone from here. But this way, we're basically right here. It's also very hot and sunny today, so I don't mind being in the shade if we can be. So yes, and right now it is 10:53 here in the Catalina foothills. Depending on where you are, I am well aware that the Northeast, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York City, especially Rhode Island, really got hit. 37 inches of snow. But we're going to, coming up, now right now, we're live on Facebook, we're live on X, and we're live on YouTube. And then coming up at the top of the hour, at 6 minutes past, we are going to be also live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. So, but this comes down to, there he is. I mean, I know the sheriff is really under fire here. And a lot of people and I'm going to ask Jennifer about that, would not do a joint command center with FBI. I think that's really interesting. We'll ask Jen Coffendaffer about that. And just the fact that, by all accounts, I want people to realize maybe some people don't fully understand how this works when you have information coming out. But the fact of the matter is, we wouldn't know this. To me, this just screams of that the FBI is very frustrated with the sheriff. And we've talked about he has kept things a very tight circle command center, won't share things, took a lot of heat in the beginning on day 6 when he attended that basketball game. And some people saying he's entitled to time off. Well, he's taken a lot of heat for it. They haven't done any press briefings. But what also was significant, just in the last about 12 hours, a little more than 12 hours, we've had some interesting developments. And it comes down to the with what we're learning is, I want to just check something, the latest. Okay. And there we go. Let me just see that. Oh, that's not what I want. As you can see, the street down below is one way. Started that over the weekend. Reward, as I've said, is now 1 million. There he is. He is certainly on the hot seat. And it seems now to me that the media, the family is starting to, the Guthrie family, at least led by Savannah. The reward is $1 million, but from what we're learning is the sheriff, he did not want them. They wanted to put $1 million right at the top, day one, and he discouraged them from doing that. So that's obviously news. So it is day 24. I find by being right here at the top of the hill, number one, and I know you're looking at a cactus as we speak. We can move it again a little bit. It is nice at times though to be in the shade. Shade is a commodity here. So he probably knows more. Why aren't they looking shit evidence of? I don't know what that is. People you can put number one in the comments. People can put. I know because of what happened, there is conspiracy theories are jumping in or starting to take over, I should say. But I come back to just some of the basics, and that is, who would know that an 84-year-old woman lives alone with no alarm and no dog and no rifle weapon? Who would know that? Because otherwise, as I've talked about, that is a high risk maneuver that this individual that we've all seen now, high risk maneuver that this individual that went in. And I also think it's interesting, and I posted that. It depends on people. I look right there. Some people, so they're saying that this image, that that the one with no backpack is potentially January 11th. I think that's interesting. Some also people on that see what they seem to think is someone peeking out from behind there. And we haven't heard that from the authorities. So, but I do, when you look at it, I don't know if it's shrubbery. Some people look at that and they see someone peeking out. Other people look at that and they say, no, it's flowers. So I don't know if there's an absolute right answer on that. But we do know that the sheriff is without question. A lot of people are questioning some of the decisions that he has made. So the big news as we start our coverage here on day 24 is okay. Now, Mike from Fox is saying the DNA samples recovered from inside the home mainly come back to people who had a reason to be there. See, that's a problem. So, what does that tell us? The DNA samples recovered from inside the home mainly come back to people who had a reason to be there. One unknown sample yielded only a partial profile that could not be checked against the FBI database of known offenders. Not viable. Now, I also want to see this also comes back to what I have mentioned, and that is that if we just talk about the son in law, who was the last person to drop her off, or last person really to see her alive, other than whoever abducted her, what we come back to, and I've said this actually, is so if they said to him, we found your, DNA inside, he would say, yeah, of course, I've been in that house, a bunch of times. I was the one that dropped her off. So I don't think that leads anywhere, is what I'm trying to say. So now I'm not sure what to make of that. I'm not sure what we should take away from that. I think people will take different things away from that, as a matter of fact. But the big news of the day, and I was watching because it happened this morning, and it happened, let's see, right up a little about 9 o'clock East Coast time. And what happened was they even broke in on Fox and announced that Savannah had released a new video and that it was, in essence, what was going on was that, hold on, that they had the $1 million reward. They had the $1 million reward. Yep. So let's see. Okay. Okay. So we're going to start in just officially in 4 minutes. Let me, just some people are messaging me. I mean, I know we're live right now, but I also want to point out, I know some people are saying about the women from Mexico, like, is that legal? No, it's not legal. As I was filming it, I was shocked that they were allowing it. I was shocked that they were. No, of course you don't just show up and start going through on private. They would go into the neighbor's property and the lot next door to Nancy Guthrie's home. And no, of course you don't do that. I was stunned that it was going on, but it's also one of the problems of the fact that one of the problem. Hold on. It's one of the problems that the sheriffs that's there at the property that he was just sitting inside the vehicle, or I think it was even a she actually, that they were sitting inside the vehicle and they didn't do anything. If you were out patrolling, you would have they would have caught that. But the fact that they were just sitting inside and not fully seeing, I mean, here I was outside and I was saying like, hey, what? But here's the thing: it's not my job. It's not my role to then say, hey, you're not supposed to be there. You have a sheriff that's right there that could say that. It's not. I'm not going to say anything. So, all right, we're going to start. I think that's interesting, though. So, so this is interesting. Uh, that the DNA recovered comes back to people who had a reason to be there. I think that's really interesting. Hmm. So no foreign DNA. Now, were the people really careful, or was it someone who had been inside the home in the past? Who would that be? Who can tell me in the comments? Who would that be? Yep, that would be who are the people? Whose DNA was in that house that they've recovered? Hmm. I would think that would be, let me think of it, the family. It is not a cold case, by the way. Jen will tell us about that. Jennifer Coffindaffer. No, a cold case is no leads, everything's a dead end, and they put it on a shelf of cold case. And that's certainly not what is going on. Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, and we're going to start in just 1 minute. In the bottom half of the hour, we are going to be joined by Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI. The sheriff made the decision to not allow them to put the $1 million award right out at the beginning. I think that's very interesting. All right, we're going to begin now. Right now, depending on where you are, I am well aware that the East Coast is dealing with the largest blizzard, even beating the blizzard of '78. I think the latest I heard, almost 38 inches of snow, 3 feet at TF Green Airport. I'm aware of that, and I think the travel ban is going to be lifted. But right now, we are, for those that are watching, now we're live on YouTube, we're live on our Facebook page, we're live on X, but we are also live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. This portion of our program is brought to you by, check out our website, depetro.com, brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. I also want to thank, to be able to do something like this, it's not easy to pull off. We have tremendous sponsors that support me in my endeavors like that, such as Propane Plus. Remember, Propane Plus for all your propane needs. I know there are people without power. Maybe this is the time. Did your propane company let you down? They did? Well, you wouldn't have had that if you were with Propane Plus. Log on 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, online at propaneplus.com. In Rhode Island, you can call them 401 885 4209, or in Massachusetts, 508 252 3359 for Propane Plus. Now, again, there's a lot of news. I'm aware of that. There's also, tonight is the president's State of the Union. You had and I think it's fantastic with the USA men's hockey. I think that is also, just what a tremendous story that is. But right now, we remain, for those that are watching, yes, here I am, Lord. There I am. We are right out here, and this is day 24. I am up the hill from Nancy Guthrie's home. This is day 24, and we've had a lot of developments on this day 24 from the last time we were on. Starting with number one, we've learned that they believe the image of the individual that you see with the mask had been there back in January. That's very strange. God, for whatever reason, I don't say there's a timestamp, but one image has the individual that you've seen, the terrifying one of going front door, and have the image of the individual, same one, but without a backpack. So I'm not sure what to make of that. But the big news of the day that actually I think all news broke in with as breaking news is that Savannah Guthrie has released yet another video on Instagram and basically has upped the reward to now $1 million. And it's very emotional. It's posted for those that want to see it. You don't have to be on Instagram. Everyone has picked up on it. She is still hopeful. Some of the things she says there, even if Nancy Guthrie is no longer with us, they want to still find out where her remains are. Anonymous $1 million reward. Now, there's two things about that stand out to me. Number one, we've also learned that she wanted to put that reward up on the first day, and the sheriff, who continually comes under fire, the sheriff discouraged her from that, saying you're going to get a lot of false leads. That's number one. Number two, Fox News is reporting that the FBI normally, and I was making mention of this with Brown University situation, they had the command center, the Joint Command Center, and it's on the right in the Providence Police Department. And you had Providence Police, State Police. You also had ATF, FBI, everyone. This sheriff has refused. He refused to do a Joint Command Center for whatever reason. So I don't understand that. But at this point, the way that I take the situation with Savannah, I think this is, and again, if you watch the video, you just feel for Savannah Guthrie, because it sure seems like someone, it comes off to me that you can tell just how someone who hasn't slept, gut wrenching, torture, how torturous this is, and also seemingly coming to grips with the fact that their mom, Nancy Guthrie, may no longer be alive. Still holding out hope for a miracle, but at the very least, that they can give her a proper burial. So the reward is basically trying to appeal to people to say, listen, if you could, we'll even give you a $1 million reward if you just tell us where, her remains are. And that is, that's not easy to get to. And there's also news today. The DNA found inside of Nancy Guthrie's home was only a partial sample, was not viable for they call it the CODIS. So I think that is interesting. So what does that, what does that tell you? Either the person was tremendously careful, or it also tells us that, and I want to go right from Michael at Fox, saying the DNA samples recovered come back to people who had a reason to be in the home, according to two federal law enforcement sources. One unknown sample yielded only a partial profile that could not be checked. So we'll ask Jennifer Coffindaffer what she makes of that. The fact that there will not be a DNA match of someone that did not have a reason to be in the home. Now, just we'll ask Jen Coffindaffer. She's going to join us at the bottom half of the hour. Again, for those that are watching or listening, this is day 24. We are outside the home of Nancy Guthrie. I also want to explain, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or X, I realize the video, the image is not as clear as if I was just on one, but the app that I use for this, in order to incorporate all the different social media, this is the audio quality that you get. So I'm aware. If this was just Facebook Live, it's clearer. If you're just on YouTube, it's clearer. But if you just do X, it's clear. But when I use this um, StreamYard, this is essentially what you get back from it. So now I also want to mention, I am aware that people are dealing with horrific conditions, digging out from this horrific blizzard. And I want to remind you, there could be someone that you have a problem, a pipe burst, or you could have water that's leaking in. And if when disaster strikes, I want to remind you about Serve Pro of Providence. Give them a call today, 401 941 5500. Serve Pro of Providence, 401 941 5500. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional. Serve Pro of Providence, whether it is a fire or a flood, or if you have water in your home or business, or maybe you have fire and then you have smoke damage. Serve Pro of Providence, 401 941 5500. They're fast, they're thorough, professional. Let me also remind you, before we get back to some of the news of the day, and again, we're going to be joined by Jen coming up at the bottom half of the hour, retired FBI agent. More people are realizing the importance of safety. You know, many people just view a fence as privacy, but it can also act as a deterrent to someone entering your home or property. Capital Fence. Call owner Mike Rizzo today at Capital Fence. Online at capitalfenceri.com or call him 401 618 4407. 401 618 4407. Capital Fence and online at capitalfenceri.com. Serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts, licensed and insured, whether it's a fence or a gate, free estimate. Capital Fence, 401 618 4407. So big news on this day 24. And I want to mention again, I recognize you want to talk about a lot of news. Number one, you do have tonight with the President's State of the Union. Should be interesting to see what type of games happen. I think everybody though is just thrilled at the USA team and how they just seem to be electrifying. Now that's interesting. I see some people on the property at Nancy Guthrie's home. But again, they've had workers out there. I want to mention that they've had workers out there. They have a pool person, they have a landscape. So it's not the most usual thing when workers that the sheriff okays walks and goes onto the property. But the reward is now $1 million. And what we also have learned is sources are saying, and we'll ask Jennifer Coffindeffer about this, that the family, Savannah Guthrie, they initially wanted to offer a reward of, they wanted to offer a reward of $1 million, but it was the sheriff that discouraged them from that, saying that that would just lead to a lot of false leads. I think there'll be some second guessing on that. The DNA that they've been waiting for does not come back to anyone foreign. So what does that tell us? The person that was in the house had a reason to be there. I'm going to attribute that to, it would sure sound like, a lot of people have questioned the son-in-law, Annie's husband. They have. And the reason is because he was the last person seemingly to see her alive. By the way, for those that are if you are watching, the drones are really back and active today. I think it's interesting how, as someone that, again, this is day 24. If you are watching, you're looking, that's a live shot of the home of Nancy Guthrie. I'm just up the hill a little bit of ways. I find it easy to broadcast. It can be difficult when you have people coming by, people want to stop, people walk up to you, just start asking questions, talking, they don't know. So I think I just have found it's a little bit easier. We also have a better Wi-Fi connection most of the time up there. So some people are filming that there are some people on the property. If I thought it was something really significant, I would go down there. But the only thing about that is, and I could, but we do jeopardize our. There's so many media that are here, and we're in the Catalina foothills, and it can be challenging. But I do see there are some people on the property, and so there are some people filming the people on the property. But when we've seen some people come to the property in the past, they have either been, I think that you see them, I can see them actually, you can see them. It's either been a locksmith or it's been someone that cleaned the pool. It was also a landscaper. So there's people that are still keeping, the property up. You don't want the property to kind of fall off or anything like that. But there are, it's just a little unusual. And I see the sheriff um, can actually is escorting the individual. So there's some false alarms that come into play. And I also want to remind you folks and thank one of our great sponsors is Watson Materials. Call Sean. I know that read the super chats. I will do that. I know that at some point this snow will melt and you're going to want to enjoy your outside property with Watson Materials. The largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island is Watson Materials. So now I'm seeing someone say that. I don't let me go back and scroll. I didn't see any super chats. I would have read a super chat from our there's Debbie. Debbie usually messages me if there's something to read about that. Debbie, if that's the case, you could certainly send me a message. Um, but the person was being escorted by the sheriff that is on the property. I also there are people that are walking around. I don't see any message. There are people that are walking around trying to volunteer, searching. But as someone that I've taken part in some of those things in the past, unless you have a good lead from law enforcement, I have found my experience has been that is a real needle in a haystack. So, I mean, that is, I want to stay with what we know. So, for those that are watching, there's a little more. The sheriff is walking someone on the property, but we have no reason to believe what I'm seeing. That doesn't look like an investigator. It could be. Let me see that. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. I apologize. Thank you, Debbie, for sending that. Let me just quickly read as we're live these super chats. Okay, yes. Uh, have they ever clarified who dropped her off? I'll answer that question. First of all, thank you to Linda, super chat on YouTube. Have they ever clarified who dropped her off? That's actually a good question. Thank you for that. So and I know the answer. In the very beginning, the sheriff said that it was the son-in-law, Annie's husband, that dropped her off. At another press conference, then he changed his answer a little bit to say that it was a family member. They kind of backed off saying family, but at the first briefing, they the son-in-law, Tomas. So now, you can read into that what you want. We do know she took an Uber over there. A lot of people found that a little strange. You have an 84-year-old woman. You live 11 minutes away. Um, why wouldn't you just go pick her up? But we don't know. Maybe that was common. Maybe that was like a routine that they were in. much like the fact that we're told that Nancy Guthrie re-entered a home by going through the garage, that the garage door, and I have plenty of video um, where we show what you're looking at. The now, again, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or X, is where we are on the west and we're facing east, and that the garage would be to the right of what you're looking at. So a lot of people wonder about that because the front door looks like a fortress that you wouldn't, and a lot of people have mentioned that people there's a lot of people that just that's how they enter their home, where the garage door goes up and down and they don't have to deal with a big heavy door. And from what we understand, and when I've shown it, it is a very big heavy door, and it is on top of that, I could see where someone gets in the habit of they just leave that bolted shut and they go in and out of their garage. I want to come back to, and again, tuning in, this is day 24. It's not that it matches the date. And this is, we are on the ground. For those that are watching, I know we have some people that are just listening, but this is, you're looking straight down this hill, and it's the home of Nancy Guthrie here in the Catalina foothills with a lot of news. And the law enforcement says the Uber driver was cleared. I know some people ask about that. I think some of the people that are asking maybe didn't catch or follow a lot of the footage or the case in the very beginning. We have a lot of video up. We have a lot of new people. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, please follow. If you're following on Facebook, you can share and make sure you follow the page. Thank you to all of our star senders. But the big news of the day to me is the reward, and we're learning more about the investigation where the sheriff, from what we're told, the sheriff that Savannah Guthrie wanted to offer a $1 million reward at the very beginning, and the sheriff's people discouraged the family from doing that. And again, we're going to find out from Jen Coffindaffer, retired FBI. She's going to join me at the bottom half of the hour. I think he will be second guessed on that. Maybe that has been their experience in the background, or is it another example that was? I don't know. I should say I don't know if that would have made a difference, but I can assure you that it's he's going to be second guessed about that decision, and I think some people might say that they should have put that out. I know what a lot of people were asking that, right? Like why isn't it a bigger reward? Many people were asking that question right from the beginning, is what I'm saying. But the reward, she did a video released. The last video released now is that the family's offering a $1 million reward, and they have also donated 500,000 to an organization that works with missing or exploited children. And I know a lot of people have mentioned that as well, as far as, how come there's other missing children and people and they don't get this type of attention? That tells me that Savannah's aware of that, and Savannah's sensitive to that. And Savannah's not ignoring that Savannah is saying that she knows that this is a problem. And when you go on that website, which was started, by the way, I believe it was started by John Walsh. That was in the early 80s when Adam Walsh disappeared. And John Walsh, the National Center for Missing Exploited Children, NCMEC, John Walsh realized that they didn't have a database for missing children. There was no government database for that. And then President Reagan apparently put that in. So, and they've also said they're incredibly grateful to the Guthrie family for making that donation. So, for the National Center for Missing Exploited Children, every child deserves safe childhood. The NCMEC, the nation's largest, most influential child protection organization. So we have there's definitely some news today with the reward. Oh, I'm seeing right now. So it's landscapers are posting no trespassing signs around Nancy Guthrie's property. I think that is in response to the women from Mexico that were I think that's from women, those women from Mexico. We have video up on that, that were just walking on the lot next door. And it's, by the way, and I want to point out that's not aimed at the media. I was here. That's aimed at these women from Mexico that showed up on the scene, and they just started walking around the property. So, but I think the news today, what's going to stand out is just the fact that, um, well, a lot of things, especially, I think it's interesting. And it was NBC that went with the story that in essence that Savannah, the Guthrie family, from day one, they wanted to offer a very substantial reward. Now, according to the family, they were discouraged from doing so by the sheriff. Now, folks, joining us right now, retired FBI agent. You see her on News Nation. We've had her on in the past, Jennifer Coffendaffer, who is so knowledgeable and widely respected. And we're going to do a split screen with my friend Jen. Let me just first adjust my camera. So then I'm like that. And then we're going to add her in. And I'm very anxious.
Hi, John.
Hey,
Thanks for
how you
having
doing,
me.
Jen?
So glad to see you're out there, boots on the ground, covering this case.
Yes.
It's
Well,
amazing.
you know that that's the best way that it's worked for me to get the most information is to be right here on the ground when it's happening. I want to just start off and ask you some of the latest developments, starting with your reaction to the video that was released of now Savannah Guthrie and her upping the reward to $1 million.
Right. I think it's long overdue. But I think that the reason she had not offered that in the past was likely because she is being, counseled in what messages are sent, counseled in money put up and everything by law enforcement. Typically, these families don't act separate and independent in cases like this, and they're going to really lean on law enforcement for, recommendations.
Essentially, the sheriff, from what we're learning, coming from NBC. So, Jen, that tells me they wouldn't be putting that out there if they didn't have that direct from Savannah. That the Guthrie family, according, they're saying they wanted to, or told news organizations they wanted to from the beginning, and the sheriff discouraged them for fear that it would lead to a lot of false leads. What do you make of that decision?
Well, I I want to say from about day 5, I've been reiterating, please get this reward up to $1 million. $1 million, $1 million, $1 million can be life changing. A couple 100,000 after taxes isn't life changing. And so I'm really glad to see this. As far as the concern about putting out $1 million, absolutely it is true. Whenever you increase the reward, you get crazy people coming up and just inundating and filling the lines. And that can be really difficult for law enforcement to handle. They're already handling 20,000 plus tips. But in my view, the reason it was important to put this huge reward out is because it's aimed at the people who know who Porch Guy is. John, if this were your dad, if this were your brother, if this were your son, you would know who it was. You would be able to look into the eyes and the eyebrows and the way the one eye fades to the nose and how they walk and the Walmart bag they like to carry around, you would know it was your relative. And I think this $1 million+ is aimed at someone who knows.
Jen, what do you make of that? And this came out last night, that they now believe those two images. There's one image, he has no backpack, one image with the backpack. They now believe, same outfit though. One has obviously the weapon, the holster. The other one does not. But what is your takeaway that they're saying they believe possibly this person had been to the property prior to that night?
Well, that's from source information. I saw it hit ABC, News Nation, Fox. It went everywhere and spread like wildfire. I always preface everything by saying it's source information described as somebody who is close to the investigation. But let's run with that for a minute. If it is true that this is a separate occasion and he was dressed the same and he came, that's a really huge obvious clue that she was completely stalked, which I've said from the beginning, and surveilled, and that this person knew this person had insider information and she was targeted. It supports people like me who have had that premise. There's a lot of people out there saying this was a burglary gone bad. I don't believe that. So this would certainly support that premise. But I give caution because even though I agree fully that the lighting looks different in the photo without the holster, without the
Oh,
gun, and without the backpack, the
me,
lighting behind looks different. But if
it
you
does
look
look,
right, and then when you
yeah,
look at the video and the other, and we know February 1st was a full moon. It was 100% luminescence from the moon, which when you're in a light pollution area, which I've lived in a light pollution area for years when I lived in Texas, and I can tell you that in that situation, the moonlight is so crisp and clear, and that is what that reminds me of. Yet in the other picture, I don't see that. So I find that piece interesting, but also keep in mind it does make some sense with the comfortableness this guy had that he could have gotten out of his car, walked around, remember it's dark, kind of got the lay of the land. Then when he was ready to do the hit, grabbed his backpack and grabbed his gun and proceeded to that front porch. So that also makes sense to me. The other possibility, although I think it's a very low percentage, is that that if there was somebody else with him, that they dressed alike. And, a lot of people are like, Jen, no, no, no. This happens a lot. It happens in different, particularly robberies and things where people who are acting in concert together like to dress alike for anonymity, like to dress alike for if they're ever caught when it comes to court, and the kind of team aspect, and they dress
yes,
exactly like. So it
yeah.
happens. I'm not saying it happened here. I'm saying you can't just totally dismiss that that isn't somebody else in that background.
That's an excellent point, Jen, because I mean, I've covered even most recently robberies where it was four individuals. They all had on those very light skinned but black masks that were all dressed in black head to toe. And if they were caught, how do you figure out which one had the weapon, which one was the one that, was the one going in? What do you make of also the fact that we're learning it's being reported? Everyone was kind of waiting for this DNA to come back. The initial report is the DNA doesn't match anyone in the database, and the DNA that they have found inside belongs or would match with someone who would have a reason to be in the home. That's new information coming out.
Who would or wouldn't? Because the information I've always heard is that this DNA that is a
Yep.
mixed sample. We don't know whether it's mixed with one, two, three, how many profiles, but that's why it's so difficult. That DNA is actually doesn't match anybody that should have been in the house or Nancy, obviously, or family. Is that they're
I'm
still
gonna
reporting?
I'm gonna read to you exactly what exactly how it was presented and the way and people news station, by the way, Brian, everyone's been terrific, but it's my understanding that the DNA that they did get, it doesn't there's it doesn't belong to someone who would not have a reason to be in the house. So I would take that as either family or someone that cleans in the house, or maybe we know that she would have friends over to play mahjong. But I'm going to here. This is Brian Enton from News Nation. DNA issues in the Guthrie investigation. DNA found cannot even be entered into CODIS. Libby Dean, News Nation. The DNA found inside was only a partial sample and not viable for CODIS. The source familiar with the investigation says. So, what is your take on that?
Two things. What is the date of that reporting?
Just this is brand new. This is
Brand
all
new.
coming down within the hour.
It makes sense to me, the CODIS, because you have to have so many markers. It has to be of a certain level to enter. And my understanding is, again, not only is it partial, but it's mixed. And whenever you have mixed profiles, there are so many more concerns with figuring out what DNA belongs to her, who, what markers, and that's why it's going to take so long. As far as the source, again, the source reporting, that it doesn't match CODIS, again, that makes a lot of sense to me. As far as the information new from Libby and Brian, that purportedly it does match somebody expected to be in the house, then I don't think that that's huge. If they're expected to be in the house, then you would expect to have their DNA there.
Right.
So unless it's semen, unless it's something that would be in a place it shouldn't be, like on her pillow, over her bed, on an article of clothing, in other words, if she was dressed in pajamas, that she was made to disrobe and put something else on or something like that. I would expect that DNA to be there. So because we don't know the method of DNA where the transfer took, in other words, blood, saliva, semen, sweat, etc., and we don't know where it was found, it's really difficult for us to make an analysis of how important it is.
What about the decision we're hearing that the sheriff is keeping it a very tight investigation, Jen? It's just him and two of his top trusted people, and that they wouldn't do a joint command center with the FBI. What do you make of that?
Listen, if they did not do a joint command center, there is a huge problem. First of all, the messaging from Sheriff Nanos, and I have tried to be extremely hesitant at just completely dropping him in the grease. But after watching him say that his officers reported there to the crime scene Saturday night, that's a quote. And then, later it was revealed it was really Sunday. And he's never really explained why he said they initially reported Saturday, and all these other misspeaks. I think the problem is, normally when FBI or law enforcement opens their mouth, we listen. We know it's not a rumor. We know it's not source. We know it's the truth. And the problem is, no one believes him. Many have lost confidence. I'm losing
Yes.
confidence.
Yeah.
And when you don't have confidence in the reporting, it's a problem. He needs to have a joint press conference with the FBI. They need to let the FBI speak and dispel some of these rumors. The problem is the FBI doesn't care what people outside think. They
Right.
really don't. They don't care. They don't. I mean, there was never a case where I said, "Ooh, I better make sure the public really understands this."
Hmm.
I could care less, and that is what the FBI is like too. But they need to dispel some of this because people are still going after the family, and then you have to
Yeah.
worry about danger and threats and people possibly taking action against family members if they're not believing what Sheriff Nanos says.
Jennifer, let me ask you this, and I won't keep you much longer, but just the nature of being here. And as you've heard, and News Nation has been fantastic. It is, I mean, it's not just dark at night, it's pitch black at night. If there was, this is what, if someone was using GPS on their phone, we believe, would have got a ping. I think you'd agree this was a high risk maneuver for someone to come in here the dead of the night and basically abduct an 84-year-old woman. But I come back to, Who would know that an 84-year-old woman lives alone in this home, lives without security, without an alarm, without a dog? She could have been out, up late on the phone. She could have been talking to a friend and said, I think I hear someone, call 911. What do you make of that aspect of that someone, that this is like, what's the motive is what I'm trying to get at. Why would someone, this is a high risk. This isn't, as you know, during the day when a lot of the burglaries take place, or a lot of times in this area, like the neighbors have talked to me, Jen, and they say, well, the break-ins normally happen in the summertime because a lot of the people just use these homes here in the Catalina foothills in the winter months because then it's so hot in the summertime they actually go to another home. So a lot of the break-ins happen when the homeowner's not there. But what do you just make of that? Where are we with motive?
No, you're exactly right. Look, this does not comport with a burglary, period, end of story. Those are done in the day, they're done seasonally when you won't get caught. A burglar, by definition, wants to burgle. They want to go in when you're not there and steal your expensive items. Also, no one who is a burglar goes into a house with a full backpack. That's
Right?
ridiculous. And the notion that, oh yeah, you might have had bags in the backpack. I don't believe that. I've never seen that. And they're looking to burgle typically small items. They get in, they get out, they don't spend 30 or 40 minutes in there. So let's talk about motive really quick. The number one Occam's razor motive that law enforcement would have thought about early is who could gain from this, who could get life insurance, who could get an inheritance. So immediately you're going to go to the family. Once they said the family is not involved, they've been cleared, and that's the exact verbiage if we're to believe Sheriff Nanos, they're cleared. So let's get that off the table. What's the next motive for kidnapping somebody? It's money, still remains money, ransom. Well, guess what? There was no viable ransom ever sent out. Those notes were a farce, and normally the family would be contacted early, not when law enforcement was crawling all over, et cetera, et cetera. So now we have ransom off the table. Okay, what does that leave us next with? What can be gained from taking this 84-year-old woman? Well, we're seeing it. We're seeing Savannah terrorized. We're seeing this family terrorized. We're seeing likely Nancy terrorized. Was this a crime strictly of retribution and hate and anger aimed at Nancy? Was the perpetrator actually paid to do this, not the one with the hate and anger? I
Mm.
think that's possible. And I also believe that this house was very much well known and targeted and understood before this crime was committed.
Jen, how can people follow your tremendous work the way I do?
Oh, thank you. Coffin Daffer, FBI. And then every morning at about 8 o'clock, I have the morning report. And the morning report is the latest on the Nancy Guthrie case. So hopefully y'all will tune in.
Jennifer, so good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. We'll talk to you again.
Good to see you. Bye.
All right, folks, there she is. Again, retired FBI. Just so fantastic. Right here on our program. Now, from what I understand, and I want to mention, I was mentioning how there was, in fact, some activity. I'm glad I didn't risk going down because it turned out it was just some landscapers that were putting up no trespassing signs. And I believe that is in reaction to these women from Mexico, maybe well intentioned, but these women from Mexico that were out here over the course of the weekend. And again, I think they were well intentioned and they've had success in finding people. Thank you, Deepfake. In they have found people, but they just came and just were no one was stopping them. They went on the property of the house next door. They started digging on, I don't know who owns the lot. It's a lot next to Nancy. May own the lot, or it could be someone that just owns an empty lot. I'm not sure. So, but this DNA, I think this is really interesting. And I didn't get into it with Jen Coffin-Denner, who was just terrific. But I come back to that this whole, I mean, this is really puzzling, especially this individual. The fact that we are hearing or seeing, I should say, that that they had been out here before and were really stalking the property out. I don't know what to make of that. Now, they also, I don't want to mention that if that individual was out here before that, I want to touch on what Jen just said, and that is this is day 24. And again, we're live right now on X. We're live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. We're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. But we're still into this. Savannah's now upping the reward, the Guthrie family, to $1 million. And we still don't know what the motive was. I find that very odd. I want to come back to, and the DNA they're saying is DNA belongs to someone who had a legitimate reason to be in the house. So let's just say someone had recently been released from being incarcerated. And so, okay, so they had been incarcerated and then they want to pull off whatever, a burglary, a robbery, but they would have whatever DNA, fingerprints, something like that. That's not the case. So this brings us back to I don't know where that puts us. I want to reset. And what I just said to Jen, who I love and respect, is I still come back to who would know that an 84-year-old woman lives alone with no alarm system, no dog, no weapon underneath her bed. No, who would know? Even if you are the person in the mask, how do you know that night at dinner she didn't mention that, I don't feel well? And then the daughter Annie says, you know what, Mom, I'll stay over with you. How would you know that? What, like, is this? So it's revenge against Nancy Guthrie, revenge against Savannah. I at this point, until they come up with something else, we still don't know what motive is. I think for those that are looking, just a quick update. The quick update is that the reward is now up to 1 million, but we still don't know who this person is. Like, and who is this? And what was the goal? What was, if we're to believe that they were stalking out the house? Early on, someone said, a member of the public, that looks like the lighting is different and it's because of the moon. So how is it possible this far in? Now you have 1 million, and all the person has to say is, I know who that is. And you collect 1 million, and they still don't have an answer on that. They still don't know who that was that went in. I want to remind you that we are still without motive. Motive can be elusive, even when, for instance, like Brian Walsh and Anna Walsh, there's still a lot of speculation. What was the motive that triggered him? And people thought of different things. Even though Brian Walsh is sitting in prison, we still don't know to this day exactly what the motive was. You had the incident at the hockey rink in Pawtucket, and there's been a lot of speculation as to what is the motive. And someone could just say, well, the person was nuts, but that doesn't, what is it that triggered? When you take the Brown University situation, that was all right. He clearly was ill, but he just had it out that he was going to try to settle some scores. And first, he went to Brown University, that Portuguese national. There was someone to me that was long disturbed. And then he went after that MIT professor who lived in Brookline for seemingly no reason. And and the only reason he seemed to stop is because when he took out that MIT professor in Brookline, after he knocked at the door, rang the bell, it's so horrifying and terrifying that he one of the bullets ricocheted and hit him in the eye. So when he was making that final video, he makes mention of that. So to me, that tells me he knew he couldn't go to an emergency room. He knew that he wouldn't be able to function much longer. And then he said he was trying to work up the courage, so to speak, to the final act of where he took himself out. But this remains. We are still without motive. I also want to remind you folks, one of our great sponsors is Kids Club on the Pike. Call them 401-443-5336. Kids Club on the Pike. Now, they are perfect right off of 295 on the Cranston Johnston line. And it's tremendous options for daycare. It's tremendous for after school activities. And they also offer a preschool. So daycare, preschool, Kids Club on the Pike. Call Kristen. They have several locations, by the way. Not just that one. They have several locations and also in Warwick. 401-443-5336. 401-443-5336 for Kids Club on the Pike. Now, there is some activity at the home of Nancy Guthrie. And I do see sheriffs that are there. We're going to be here for a good part of the afternoon. But it seemingly is related to the fact that they had a landscaper come out and they're putting up no trespassing signs on the property. And I want to be very clear. That is not in relation to anything done by the media. I was here, some women from Mexico. But let me just sum up where we are. I mean, the news cycle is remarkable between the president's State of the Union speech to a record setting blizzard in the Northeast. I mean, not only just beating the blizzard of 78, but smashing the blizzard of 78. The amount of snow, people that are without power, people that are trying to dig out, and it's going to be a long process to do that. Um, and meanwhile, we continue the coverage here in the Catalina foothills. And the big headlines of the day are really this video that Savannah has put out, released, upping the reward, to the fact that we're also learning that she, that Savannah initially apparently wanted to put out a $1 million reward on day one and was discouraged from doing so by the sheriff. So I find that very interesting. I think that is something that the sheriff, they're not going to like it, but is going to be second guessed about that. There's a lot of second guessing going on with this sheriff's department, but they're making it official. The family of the missing Tucson woman, Nancy Guthrie, offering a private $1 million reward. Credible information leads to her return. That's from FBI Phoenix. I think it's also interesting, and I may have Jen back at some point, but the sourced versus unsourced. The sheriff is saying, we're aware doorbell images released depict a suspect in different stages of attire, including with and without a backpack. There's no date or timestamp associated with these images. Therefore, any suggestion they were taken on different days is purely speculative. But the fact of the matter is, the media went with that, beginning with ABC News and followed by Fox and CNN and News Nation, and then the local stations. So that tells me that, okay, so it's not the sheriff putting it out, but it is in fact most likely the FBI that is saying that, if you were to put that out, it wouldn't be wrong. And I think they're also the ones trying to keep interest alive in the story of exactly what happened to her. And I want to come back. There's a number of different conspiracy theories out there. I'm still under the belief that, to me, this timeline events that we've been told, to me, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that if and everything remains on the timeline. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm saying the timeline of events that the sheriff has out, which was dropped off at 9:30, 9:45, and then didn't show up at a friend's house for church services. And then they call. I think everyone is just kind of treading water here, pivoting in place because everyone is just trying to work off that timeline that I just find very, very suspect. So now, if you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the top of the hour news. Again, check the page. We will be doing updates. Again, tremendous amount of news with the State of the Union, the storm, travel ban lifted. If you're watching, though, we'll take a walk down and go right by and at least show you the no trespassing signs. Now, again, as I say that, just to caution you, when you move around up here, it can get a little glitchy with the Wi-Fi. So just know that it could impact our signal as we're going to walk down. What I find about the Catalina foothills, it's a beautiful area of the country. It really is. And this is as I mentioned, this is a very desirable place to live, and it's very exclusive place to live. And all of the property, like, look at this, is just an empty lot. So someone, I don't know who owns it. Someone just like, no, I don't want to build. I just want to keep an empty lot. Each house is different. No cookie cutters here. This is the house I'm going to show you that Savannah grew up in. This is the house that Nancy has lived in for 50 years. And this is where yesterday the media started to some pull out a little bit, back up. Not everybody, though. Not everybody. So let me just look for the no trespassing sign, which I think was right over there. Okay, so there it is. We'll go right in front of the home. Yep, no trespassing private property. I know. I think on your end, because of the way the camera is, it's backwards. So again, the media stays right here. ABC News did leave, so some have taken over the tent. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back a little bit later. But I'll move out of the way.